Up next is a nascent idea discussion. Our next speakers are Jeffrey T. Olimpo, Amy Pate, and Amy Kern. Jeffrey is from the University of Texas at El Paso. Amy is from Arizona State University, and Amy IE is from University of Texas, El Paso. They will share their nascent idea discussion titled Crafting a Blueprint for the Next Decade of Education and Scholarship on Graduate Teaching Assistant Professional Development.
Thanks, Frank. We'll get, Jeff's gonna share the screen for us so that we can get started. Great. And Jeff, are you ready?
I am. Can you see my screen?
I see your screen and I see you now.
Okay, all right, perfect. Hi, Amy.
Hi. All right, so we'll get started. We want to, first of all, thank you for joining us for this session. We're going to take a few minutes to look into our crystal balls, perhaps, and really start exploring the idea of what perhaps the next 10 years might look like as we think about graduate teaching assistants. We want to consider how we want them to develop, what types of professional development to guide them into, how to support them with specific experiences so that they're ready for current issues in higher education. So my colleagues and I, Jeff, Amy, and I are also looking forward to joining you on this journey, this discussion for the next 50 minutes. We'll take a second to just introduce myself. I'm Amy Pate. It is Pate, not Pate. Everybody tries to do that to me and add the French accent, but it's not. I love saying this. I'm the AD of the TIC at SOLS in ASU, but ASU is famous for acronyms, but really what I am is the Associate Director of the Teaching and Learning Center, embedded within the School of Life Sciences at Arizona State University. And I specifically work with grads in the CERTL program, and I teach a course in scientific teaching. And I'm part of the pandemic cohort of BioTap, where we were all online the whole time, where I researched inclusive teaching. So with that, Jeff, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It is good to see all of you. My name is Jeff Olimpo. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Biological Sciences at the University of Texas at El Paso, as Frank mentioned. My research area of interest is primarily centered on cures or course-based undergraduate research experiences. And within that very broad umbrella, part of the work that we do, and Amy with the IE also does, as she'll introduce herself in a moment, is focused on providing professional development experiences to graduate teaching assistants who are facilitating cures and then understanding what the impacts of those professional development opportunities are. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Amy 2.0. I don't know how to refer to you. I'm sorry, right? The other Amy.
Amy IE.
There you go. Amy, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Hi, I apologize for that. I am Amy Kern. I am a PhD student with Jeff at the University of Texas at El Paso.
Thank you for your introductions. We'll go to the next slide and real quickly go over our objectives. These, like all good instructors, we have objectives for everything we do, but these are meant to be exploratory and open. We're hoping to invite our attendees to contribute to this conversation. We're going to try to, as a group, define some current trends in GTA PD. We're going to look for some key areas for the future that perhaps we need to put some more effort into. Hopefully share some ideas for innovative approaches. And at the end, share a plan for some new collaborations. We certainly see this as that's one of the main objectives for going to a conference, is to find partnerships and collaborators to work on future work. So next slide is our agenda. Agenda is pretty simple and basic. What we're going to be doing is giving you time for discussions with your colleagues, but we're going to start with a little bit of structure so you know where Jeff and Amy and I are kind of coming from in terms of GTA PD. And then we're going to break you out into rooms based on your interest of different topics. You're going to have a chance to discuss with each other, come up with some ideas, work on a Jamboard, and then we'll come back as a large group. We'll debrief it and wrap it up. So next slide. So we're going to start you off. This was not a scientific or formal study. Jeff and I sat in a Zoom room and brainstormed and came up with 5 focal areas that we thought could be really interesting to explore further for this topic. And so the first one is inclusive teaching. And as you know from my background, it's kind of my passion. I've been working with ASU for the last couple of years and colleagues. And we moved really from an initial focus on just accessing technology for those students with disabilities to a much deeper understanding of inclusive teaching. So things like even awareness of food scarcity, privacy during proctoring became issues. Certainly, we also looked at non-visible disabilities like PTSD or anxieties with testing and social groups. So that's inclusive teaching. It's a big umbrella to kind of put a lot of different topics under.
So I'll step in and talk a little bit about the second point, which is cures and laboratory education. Again, this is my own bias and the perspective and world I tend to live in most frequently. But I failed to mention that I think I was in the inaugural cohort of biotech fellows during that year, and I'm sure in years after. Laboratory education was a key focus among many of the participants. If you're not familiar with cures, the goal there is to engage students in quote unquote real world scientific work through a research intensive experience. So it's a counterpoint in many respects to a more cookbook or cookie cutter lab environment. And we can focus on all kinds of things, cognitive gains, affective and psychosocial outcomes in those spaces, both for students and for the TAs. I would argue that there is at this stage very limited research on TA professional development, particularly in cures. I see Ash's square, so shout out to Ash and a few other folks. I think I saw Emma on here, Emma Goodwin. So shout out to a few folks who are exploring the TA aspect and the faculty aspect. So for instance, Kelly McDonald's work. But another area that we can dig arguably a little bit deeper into. And then I'm going to turn the floor now back over to Amy with a Y to talk about focal area number 3.
Thanks, Jeff. So number 3 is online teaching and learning. That's kind of a passion for instructional designers, which is the team that I lead. And it's also certainly an area where ASU excels in our enrollment, but we're still really challenged by creating really high quality experiences for our students that aren't in a campus classroom. And how do we do that? A lot of times we look at various technologies, so we can certainly talk about virtual reality experiences and simulations, but I think there's more to that in that umbrella as well, which are things like, how do we create that high touch personalized learning that we so passionately hold on to in more of the traditional classrooms? So next slide is number 4. And Jeff's
number 4.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Number 4 on our list is evidence-based or high-impact practices. We recognize that this is a massive catch-all, right? And that things like cures and a lot of the other pieces that Amy has introduced to us would fall under this umbrella as well. But if this is your area of interest, we're thinking about, broadly speaking, student-centered approaches to teaching and learning, keeping in mind that that can happen either in formal classroom spaces or, of course, in informal spaces as well. And then high impact practices, again, a very generic in some sense term to capture a lot of things: study abroad, learning communities, problem-based learning, place-based education, creative and scholarly endeavors, and so on and so forth. And then the last topical area that we are focusing on here, again, in our non-exhaustive list, we refer to broadly as professional pathways. So for instance, individual development plans or IDPs receive a lot of attention at the moment, have received a lot of attention. And so these would be conversations that are more centered around thinking about next steps for TAs, perhaps following graduation, or using certain tools like the IDPs to more systematically and structurally unpack students' academic, professional goals, teaching goals here if you're working with TAs. And again, this would arguably be infused throughout the other focal areas that we've identified. But we can also be very explicitly, we would argue, I think, focused just on this element, right? So professionalism and professional advancement.
Great. So you've heard our 5 big umbrellas that we've kind of mentioned, which are inclusive teaching, cures, online teaching, professional pathways, and evidence-based teaching. And what we're looking for the next minute is for you to pop into the chat room and just think about, are there any particular areas that you're interested in talking about that don't fit in these 5 umbrellas? So would you propose another umbrella for our particular discussions? And you can put those in the chat room. We'll give you 1 minute to do that. And as you all know, 1 minute of silence on Zoom is excruciatingly difficult for instructors. So about 30 seconds to post anything else. Now I'm starting to see some things. So meaningful assessments might be an area that we would want to look at. TA identity from Judy. Those are good umbrellas. Okay, so we'll wrap that up. Jeff, are you going to add those 2 umbrellas to our Jamboard?
Yes, I will in just a moment.
Okay, so there we go. And Jeff's going to take it away from here.
All right, so I will add in the groups that just came up, but what we invite you to do now is to visit the link that you see here. And of course, on your screen, right, it is not a hyperlink. So I'm going to go ahead and type it directly into the chat, assuming I spelled everything correctly. So we invite you to go there, and what you'll see, and I need to add the new ones in, of course, but what you'll see is kind of sticky notes in the 4 corners and in the middle for the 5 focal areas that we talked about. And then in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and I apologize because I'm sharing multiple screens, but I'm going to go ahead and invite you to create your own sticky note and then simply drag your name, right? Drag your name to whichever area you're interested in talking about. So I'm going to move this down here and forgive the fact that it's all over the place. So I'm going to create these, I mean, you'll see these bins, right? If you're creating a sticky note or you're not familiar with Google Jamboards, on the left-hand panel here, the one that looks like a Post-it note or sticky note, you're just going to click there, type in your name. If multiple people are doing this, your notes may populate all at the same time on top of each other. And if that's the case, you just want to drag your name someplace else, right? So if you think your note is buried behind somebody else's note, we can just move people around. So we'll give folks a minute to do that.
Jeff, I'm sorry, I don't know how to make a Post-it note on this, sorry.
Sure. So I don't know what I have too many buttons open, but if you're on Jamboard, over on the left, you'll see like a board of icons, right? A pen, what looks kind of like an eraser, a pointy note. Right below the one that looks like a pointer, that arrow is the sticky note function. So you're just going to click on that sticky note function, and it should bring up one of these. I mean, you can choose a color, you can do all kinds of fun things, right? But once you do that, you're going to go ahead and just type your name into the space there and drag yourself wherever you would like to move to.
Jeff, sorry, we're only supposed to pick one.
Yeah. This is just helping us to think about breakout rooms in the future.
Okay, that's what I figured. Thanks.
So you're gonna have to commit to one eventually. But I know we're mean like that. I see down the lower right, nobody wants to talk about online teaching and learning because that was a traumatic experience for all of us, apparently. We're over that. We want to move on. But okay, I want to give you all just one more minute. If you have not created a sticky note, I wasn't able to determine who made the comment about needing to create a sticky note, but hopefully your question was addressed. If not, please let me know. We want to make sure everybody has a chance to engage.
I was going to say, Jeff, if you're having trouble popping your name onto the Jamboard, you could just put it in the chat and which one you want to go to, and maybe we could finalize it that way if anybody's having troubles.
We're going to move folks into breakout groups in a little bit of time. And if at that stage also you're like, I think I picked this, or I couldn't create a note, or we can move you into whichever room is appropriate as well. So have no fear. We're not going to lose you or leave you out in left field. We'll make sure you get into the space that you want to be for the purposes of discussion. All right, so again, if you have not done so yet, please, we'd encourage you go ahead and place your name on the Jamboard just by creating one of those sticky notes and then dragging yourself to the appropriate location. We'll check forward. The next thing that we want to do is, now that you've identified an area, right, a topic that interests you, that you want to engage with others in conversation around, we're going to invite you to take just 5 to 10 minutes on your own, independently, quietly, and jot down a few thoughts to the prompts that you can find in this new forum. You'll see we're going to use a lot of tiny URL links to help structure our conversation. Thank you, Frank. So Frank has graciously put the link into the chat window for you. It is just a Google form. It's relatively short, but we invite you again to take about 5 to 10 minutes to jot down your own thoughts. This is going to help us segue into the small group and then subsequently larger group conversations. I'm going to mute myself, but we're all still here, right? So if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to just mic on if you're comfortable doing so, or type your thoughts into the chat, your questions or concerns into the chat. And Amy, or I, right, or I can address those for you. So again, I'll keep track of time, and in the chat window, I'll also give you a quick update on time remaining. All right, folks, take just one more minute to wrap up your thoughts. Dot your I's, cross your T's.
I was just going to remind everybody that this is just to get your thoughts down on paper real quick so you're prepared for your group discussion. But it doesn't have to be perfect. Please don't feel the need to cite any of your answers or anything like that. We're just looking for some thoughts before you get into your group.
All right, when you have that last thought jotted down, go ahead and submit. Click that done button, keeping in mind at the bottom that you can access copies of your answers just by emailing them to yourself. So as we move into the conversation, if you want to have your thoughts in front of you as you enter them into the page, then we would encourage you, of course, to have emailed those responses to yourselves. So what we're going to do now, and I apologize that this slide is beefy in terms of text, is for about 15 minutes or so, we're going to move you into breakout rooms based on your topic area of interest. And in those breakout rooms, we want you to do 3 things. The first, or actually 4, the first is introduce yourself very briefly, say hi to the folks that you're working with in that space. Discuss what thoughts you jotted down in response to the prompts in the Google form we just asked you to complete. And then as time permits, we want you to think about if you were designing or working in this area, right, in CARES, in inclusivity and accessibility and so on and so forth, what might be some of the challenges and conversely the benefits to developing professional development for TAs in that topical area. And then how do you envision working with each other, for instance, the people in your breakout rooms, to achieve the efforts that you've collectively outlined? So again, what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to open breakout rooms. If you indicated which topic area you are interested in, I've already assigned you to those rooms. If not, you can let Amy, myself, other Amy, I'm sure Frank or Ash probably, and we can kind of move you around to the appropriate rooms that you need to be in. So I'm going to go ahead and open those rooms, keep track of time. Thank you, Frank. Keep track of the time and bring you all back once about 15 minutes has elapsed. So happy chatting with other people in your breakout room area. So for folks not assigned to a room, are there specific areas that you would like to move into? All right, welcome back. I see most people are now back in the main room. I was just saying to Amy with a Y, I apologize because I know oftentimes the closing of breakout rooms comes midstream in conversation. And so I put it out there for folks that if you want to come hunt me down, you're more than welcome to. Find me at Sabre in the summer or something like that and just yell at me. That's okay. But that aside, hopefully you had an opportunity to connect and chat, even if briefly, with the folks in your breakout rooms, and a time to reflect and think more deeply about those topic areas that you expressed interest in. In the event that anybody may have joined late, in the chat window, what I've done is I've posted the link to the Google form where you can record your own initial thoughts. And we recognize, of course, at this stage that it's going to be shaped likely in part by the conversation that you've just had. But again, we want to be mindful that we're giving folks the space to be able to express their thoughts and beliefs about those topical areas. And so if you did not have an opportunity to fill out that form, we'd welcome you to do so just at your earliest convenience, right? It's not going to close. So whenever you have a free moment, we would love to hear from you. So I'm going to check forward and I'm going to turn the floor over to Amy with an IE to help us kind of generally wrap up our session here in the last few minutes.
So hi all, we're going to debrief a little. And while we do that, we're going to send you to another tiny URL site here with the following title. I think it's in the window right now. So
I just posted it for you.
perfect, thank you. All right, and scribes or a note taker for your group, please post the top 3 points or takeaways from your group's discussion regarding benefits, challenges, and collaborations. And we will put them on a sticky note within this window.
So I just want to add, thank you, Amy, that if somebody wasn't collecting thoughts, you're more than welcome to post as well. So if you want to contribute something to the board, feel free to do so. And then on the pad, please. So go ahead and click on that or type in that new link, tinyurl.com TAP debrief. And then to help us organize our thoughts, please color code. So if you are in the inclusivity group, change your or leave your stickies yellow. If you are in Cures or Labs, blue. If you're in EBTs or HIPs, green.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of interesting comments. All right. So if we want to start discussing it, we can stop popcorning these ideas. So let's open up the floor for some conversation. Does anyone want to share their stickies with us?
Well, I'll go.
Okay.
We were talking about high impact practices, and one of the challenges that we were talking a lot about was that there's something of a disconnect between what we're asking TAs to learn to do, and we're trained. We want them to be thinking about high impact practice and professional development long term, but the way we train them, even when we get even well intentioned, we're still training them for what we need now. We're training them to be TAs in a lab. We're not thinking about the fact that when they go out and become a faculty member, they're more likely to be teaching a class of 50, 100, 500 in a very different environment. And that requires a different skill set and a different way of thinking. And that maybe we need to be thinking about what Beth was saying, in a longer term mindset of how do you prepare them for what's coming 5-10 years from now, not just the corporate culture of let's get the product and get as much profit out of it and goodie out of it as we can in right now.
That's a really good point. Anyone else want to share what they found with their group?
Well, I can talk about our group on inclusive teaching. We really, I think we focused a lot on the challenges, and maybe because the topic is a little bit newer and maybe more difficult, or more of our focus has been on it lately. Just trying to go from beyond having a single module about inclusion to try to, you know, get them to build awareness to how do we really build it into everything we do. And then I think the other challenge that we really faced was how do we assess it? Does anybody else want to jump in? We had a good discussion.
I agree. Anyone else, please share with us from the CURE group.
Okay, I'll share.
Thank you.
We also hit on a lot of the challenges, especially, and one that we talked about several of them, and so you can see some of the notepads up there. We also tried to think about some solutions, but one of the questions really was, how do you get GTAs ready for the chaos, train them to sort of navigate the chaos that could be a cure, and also getting the buy-in for maybe a little bit of extra time necessary to train them to be, you know, strong instructors of a cure, not just from them, but also from their graduate mentors, if you know, if that's a problem at your institution. And so several ideas. We talked about really highlighting the benefits of research experiences in general, whether they be in faculty mentored labs or in the CURE setting. And if the GTAs recognize why this could be very beneficial for students, then they can pass that information along, but also the benefits to them themselves. And so they're getting experience mentoring in a more authentic situation than they would if they were teaching a very prescriptive lab, communication, troubleshooting. And so they just really need, I think you need to set their expectations properly. But in addition to that, if you can pair GTAs incoming with more experienced GTAs to help them navigate these experiences, and also if you have time to have these GTAs shadow or assist with a cure in advance of teaching it. These are some ideas we talked about. And yeah, does anybody else want to add anything to the CURE group? So we're kind of talking about the benefits and the challenges to both the students in the class and the GTAs themselves and how to address all of these.
So I'm sorry to alert for the time.
So the time is now 2:25. Thank you, Gilly. And so be respectful of people's time. If you need to leave, you can leave. But since we have a long break coming after this, we can continue the conversation for those who'd like to stay for a while. Otherwise, we'll be back at 2:40 for a talk. So I'll pass it back to the discussion leaders.
I'm also going to advance us to this last piece. We have one last tiny URL for you. This is just a 2-panel Jamboard where you can post resources, including yourself. So if you are a super knowledgeable other or someone who has certain skills in an area that you feel may be beneficial for others in the group, feel free to place your information there as well. But you'll see 2 boards here that you can cycle between. One about these resources, so anything you want to share with a group. And then if you navigate to the second board just by clicking the arrow at the top, if you have any questions or concerns, so a muddiest point, you can visit the link that's there now in the chat window. Or then in the interest of time, yeah, let's continue to have any conversation that folks may want to have.
And Jeff, if there's no questions, we could also just let everybody know that we're really interested in collaborating with you more on this question of a blueprint for the next decade. And if you're interested in joining us, what do they do, Jeff?
Dial our new magic phone. No, just kidding. If you're
I was gonna say.
interested, I feel like we're a what you're doing, like an infomercial. 2 things. The first is we asked for your potential interest on the Google form that we asked you to fill out way early on. If not, you can reach out to one of us. I'll just drop my contact in. I should have put it on this slide. I apologize. But you can email me also directly. So we realize we're a large group and an exciting group, right? It's exciting to see all your faces here on this particular call. And so if you want to move forward with us and kind of synthesizing some of the thoughts and conversations we've had today into a more formal product, feel free to reach out to me directly. If you did not have an opportunity to express interest or you changed your mind, for instance, during the conversation, right? You can reach out to me directly.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Amy. This has been fun.
Thank you all.